Alexis Nunes back with Nate the Great, Nate Saunders. You know what it is. All the F1 action is moving to Montreal next, Canada, Nate. So plenty of things to touch on. First and foremost, though, let's spare a moment for Ferrari, because what a nightmare weekend it was for both of them in Baku, hoping for better days in Canada. What do you think?
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, better days for Ferrari at this point would just be finishing the race based on Baku. But it was a really, really disappointing race. I mean, both the Ferraris out and two of their customer engine teams also having issues as well, which really isn't great at this stage of the season. It basically shows that there are some issues there that need fixing. And you're right about this quick turnaround. There's not a lot of time to get to the bottom of those problems. So horrible time for it to happen. We had a really nice battle forming between Leclerc and the Red Bulls in Baku, and obviously Sainz might have been in there as well. And it's just such a huge amount of points they've given up now, you know. But let's not forget, like at the start of the season, we were talking about Red Bull's reliability issues. We're saying maybe it's going to cost them the championship. Verstappen was nearly 40, I think over 40 points behind Leclerc.
I was on the Charles Leclerc bandwagon.
Right. So many of us were. It looked like it had all just come together. And over the past few races, Ferrari have looked fragile, both on the car side, but also on the strategy side in Monaco, you know, with all the mistakes they made there. So things starting to crack a little bit for Ferrari. Luckily, there's still a lot of this season left, so it's not complete panic stations for them. We saw Red Bull.
So they can salvage some.
I think they can. I mean, look at Red Bull overturned a much bigger points deficit to lead now, and that took them five or six races. So I think Ferrari can do it, but you have to get on top of these issues. There's so many races now coming up in Europe, and a lot of places where it seems like Red Bull has maybe the stronger race package, so they really need to get a handle on those problems quickly. And yeah, it's crazy to think that we've almost flipped the narrative completely from the start of the year. But yeah, a really disappointing race, and I think that fear we all had coming into the season that maybe Ferrari were going to drop the ball maybe is coming true. But I'm holding on to a glimmer of hope, but that glimmer is a real glimmer at the moment.
Yeah.
It's fading fast, I think.
It's a glimmer that's probably not looking like it could be in Montreal.
I'm not sure, because it does seem like the Red Bull has the better race package. But I think at this stage for Ferrari, like a glimmer, a good race for them is to get both cars finishing on the podium. Whether that's a win or whether it's second and third, who knows? But after the last two races they've had, you need to have a strong kind of race just to kind of get that good vibe back. And I think they need that right now.
All right, well, speaking of car issues and reliability issues overall, that's something that we uncharacteristically have spoken about a lot when it comes to Mercedes. Those issues haven't been a secret at all. And now there's a whole bounce thing going on right now, Nate. We did see a taste of it, I suppose, at the weekend. What do you expect for Canada?
Yeah, that was so strange. And what was odd about it was McLaren's actually one of the teams that we haven't seen have bouncing issues until Baku. And Daniel Ricciardo likened it to his head being bounced by an NBA player like it was a basketball. And Lewis Hamilton basically climbed out of the car. He was in real pain afterwards. And it's a real issue. And I think that it's interesting because Mercedes seem to suggest that if they can get a handle on that bouncing, they think they'll be right up there. They think it's cost them so much time that once they've got that time back, they'll be right up there. And maybe that is the case, but it's been interesting. You know, Christian Horner said on Sunday that maybe those issues are being overplayed slightly to force F1 to change the rules. And he is right in that it's Mercedes' job to get on top of that. It's not F1's job. Yeah. You know, every team made the same car. A lot of teams, including Red Bull, aren't struggling with that. So, yeah, it's a real worry. And Lewis has said he's going to race in Canada, but really concerning when you see a 37-year-old driver climbing out of a car like that. Russell's been struggling as well, but I think the age gap with those two guys is really significant. And hopefully Lewis is okay, but you hate seeing any driver in pain like that, and especially when Lewis had to be helped out of the car. I've never seen him like that before, so that was a real worry. And Canada should be better. That long straight in Baku was so long for them to be dealing with it, but there is another long straight in Canada, so Lewis might not be relishing. This is the place he won his first race. He might not be relishing the return race as he might have been otherwise. As
we said, the nostalgia, they're tugging on the heartstrings, especially for Lewis, who's having a lot more struggles than he's probably used to this season. Than I can't remember the last time he struggled like this, really and truly. But we've also seen a George Russell kind of come into his own. And, you know, when we would do the ESPN F1 podcast, this was a dream pairing that, you know, made our mouths water, because we really rated George as a driver, and he really seems to have, you know, taken the bull by the horns, not the Red Bull by the horns, but kind of, you know, of course at Mercedes. What do you make overall of this kind of Lewis versus George kind of pairing?
I've been so impressed with George. I think I said, we did a preview video before the season. I predicted that it would take George a lot of time to get up to speed with Lewis. And I genuinely believed that. And he's proven me and a lot of people completely wrong. And I think he's shown why Mercedes have had so much faith in him. You know, he's driven a very bad car for 3 years. And I think that actually is probably helping him a lot right now. He's able to extract the most from this car. And he looks so confident. I mean, every qualifying session, he's qualifying 5th or 6th. And in the race, qualifying is so important, obviously. And I know that sounds like a really dumb thing to say about F1, but in every race, Russell's had a fairly straightforward race. And I don't mean that to take away from what he's done, but there's not been issues. Whereas Lewis has been qualifying uncharacteristically quite poorly. And in races, as we saw in Baku, his whole race he spent fighting, and then he gets back to 6th. So Lewis is giving himself a lot more to do. And Lewis is clearly a lot more uncomfortable with the car. We heard, it's interesting, Toto Wolff seems to be trying to manage some of his frustrations. We heard a radio message to Lewis, but I mean, Lewis is one of, if not the greatest driver that F1's ever had. I think he'll get back on top of it, and we've seen other drivers struggle. Schumacher had some struggles after he won all his championships. Vettel's had some up and down years, so I think this is just part of the course of F1, and George Russell's part of that new generation coming through who are just pretty special. So
and hungry.
And you said about taking the bull by the horns. I think if Russell had the car to do that, he would be
taking the Red Bull by the horns.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he wants to be doing that. So it's good for Mercedes. They know both guys there can do that when the car's in the right place. It's just not quite there yet.
Well, him ending up on the podium this past weekend, I think is just a subtle reminder to the ones who are usually up there that, hey, don't you worry, you might see me here a bit more.
Three now this
podiums.
year, so he's doing really well.
Absolutely amazing for George. As we said, we'd definitely love to see him probably win a race eventually. But this weekend now, Canada, Montreal, who's your race winner?
I can't look past Max at this point.
Yeah.
I think, I really got on board with the Sergio Perez hype train after Monaco, but I think Baku was very interesting because when those two guys were in a straight fight, Perez was told don't fight, which I think made sense for Red Bull. They've had their drivers collide there before, as people who've seen Drive to Survive have seen. But once he was past, Max was well clear, and he was 4 or 5 seconds down the road within about 2 laps. So clearly in a straight fight, I think those two guys, it's not a straight fight in terms of talent. As much as I love Perez, I think Max, when it's those two guys, is going to be the quicker guy. And we have this trait now with the Ferrari where they seem to be able to qualify really well, and the pace just isn't there in the race. There's an incredible stat now that Leclerc, in races that he has had pole, Verstappen has won more races from Leclerc being on pole than Leclerc has won on pole, which is it shows you just how little of his pole positions Leclerc has been able to convert into victories. And so I can't look past Max at the moment until Ferrari win. They haven't won since early April, Ferrari, which is crazy to think about because their car looks so good.
Exactly.
And on Saturdays they've been unmatched. I think Leclerc is really cementing his legacy as like the best qualifier right now in F1. Sad thing is, for whatever reason, Ferrari's just not quite there on where the car is. They're not quite there maybe on strategy, and it's hurting Leclerc, and obviously the engine issues don't help either. So I would say I think I'm looking at Verstappen. I think Leclerc will beat Perez to third, but I think those three on the podium. Sainz just doesn't seem to be in the right place with the car, which is a real shame because I think Carlos is a great driver, but there's just something not quite there clicking for him yet. So that would be my podium. But yeah, I hope I'm wrong, purely because if Max keeps winning, the championship doesn't look that close, but at the moment it seems like he's the guy.
Hard to pick against Max Verstappen. That's Nate's pick for this upcoming race weekend in Montreal, Canada. Make sure you guys get your picks in as well on ESPN.com. Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube, and for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app, and for premium content plus live streaming, make sure to subscribe to ESPN Player.